Welcome to your New Hampshire National Guard podcast. We are always ready, always there. This podcast series is a production of the State Public Affairs Office.
Hello, I'm your host, Tech Sergeant Charles Johnston with Public Affairs, and this episode of the podcast features Warrant Officer Candidate Adam Wong. He's an IT analyst with the 136th Cybersecurity Company, and in the civilian sector, he works at MIT Lincoln Lab. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sergeant.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Sure. So I joined the Army National Guard in 2012 as a firefinder radar operator, 13 Romeo, as some people would say. I tracked inbound and outbound artillery rounds with radar. Essentially, my battery we downsized because of changes of mission and strategy for the Army in general. And so my battery commander was promoted. He went to Joint Force Headquarters, and he was standing up a cyber team. And he knew my background, having an IT degree. And he said, "Hey, you want to join the cyber defense team I'm making?" And I said, "Sure, beam me up." And for the past about 6 years, I've been on in support of two different teams in New Hampshire. We train together. We have the Defensive Cyber Operations Element, that team protects the state network, and the state military network, as well as the 136 Cybersecurity Company, which is a deployable unit in support of United States Cyber Command. I joined the National Guard again to pay for college. Thankfully, I got my bachelor's at University of New Hampshire in 2016. I finished up my master's part-time at Dakota State University and starting my PhD program in the fall for cyber defense. Yes.
Dr. Wong.
One day.
Has a nice ring to it. So tell us a little bit about what it is you do in the unit on the Army National Guard side and the type of training that it required for you to do what you do.
Yeah, so the training varies every month. We try to look at essentially what we call our doctrine, our sort of strategic plan for how the Army will maneuver in cyberspace, being that fifth domain of warfare, that new frontier, if you will. So we look at the plan and say, okay, cybercom, we have this idea of offensive and defensive cyber operations. We're going to take 12 months out of the year, and we're going to try to break it apart in a reasonably planned manner of attacking this problem. Like, okay, this month we are going to solely train on how you manage all of your users in a computer. These are how you force them to change their password. These are the privileges they should have. That's say towards the beginning. So we concentrate on operations, and then we shift to defense. So this is how we analyze network traffic. So when you visit web pages, you generate records of that, and we sort through the logs. We can read it. We can manipulate and say, okay, there's something not right with this guy's computer, or this person received a spear phishing email, so a malicious email with a bad URL. It's like, can you analyze it? Yeah, sure. This is what I found on this website. This website is dangerous because of X, Y, and Z. This is how it got to the user. This is who sent it, and we try to pull the thread. It's almost we kind of dive into a world of forensics when we handle cybersecurity, like post-mortem, as we say, post-mortem, after something bad happens. With respect to the sort of the offensive side, although we are a cybersecurity company, we do rehearse offensive security. So we do similar things to the bad guys, but we target ourselves in a planned manner, planned and safe manner. So we do what we call port mapping. So we sort of knock on quote unquote windows or doors on a computer, if you will, and check what responds, what doesn't, what we can figure out about a computer, what weaknesses there might be, things like that.
You have an annual exercise. Sometimes it's been held here in New Hampshire, Cyber Yankee. That's kind of a big deal. What does that entail?
Cyber Yankee, the my favorite 2 weeks out of the year. I'm being serious when I say that. Usually, my teammates will see me carrying, Pelican cases and boxes of gaming equipment. So I'll bring a giant monitor, red, blue, green headsets that have flashy lights, everything. And that 2-week exercise is a way for us as New Hampshire and New England states to rehearse defending what we call critical infrastructure. So when we think about Department of Homeland Security, they say these are the different sectors of the country in which we care about. For example, power plants, all the power plants together, all the water plants, all the the farms, or all the chemical plants, all of these different industries that make our country work. They all have, each and every one of these industries have their own peculiar network design, and CyberYankee is a way for us to engage with certain sectors and say, we are here to help. These are our capabilities, and this is how, when you're in danger, this is how you call us. And yeah, I love CyberYankee because it gets me out of the lab, so I'm not doing research or something monotonous, but it's like I get to do my MOS. I get to hunt for evil, as we say in the cybersecurity world.
And what's interesting is that exercise, those notional situations that you train for, you just practiced real world during COVID.
Yes, I did. I did two state active duty rotations in support of the New Hampshire Department of IT. The first one was a week long during the very start of the pandemic. So I was on the Emergency Operations Center floor, the watch floor for the state of New Hampshire. And it was kind of scary. During the start of the pandemic, I literally watched a map of the United States slowly turn red from both the East and West Coast as the pandemic spread. So that was a little scary. But during that time, I was called in. I was asked to support the Department of IT because we were essentially told, like, okay, be ready if something bad happens. Be ready if someone decides to kick us while we're down. So they asked me to augment the Department of IT security team and support them and try to make big problems smaller for them and give them an extra hand.
More specifically, we teamed with state entities during the height of the pandemic to help keep their systems safer.
We did, and we still do. Last year, my second tour was actually with the same folks, so I got to see familiar faces. They, they trusted me enough to bring me back, which is great. And so we're building that shared trust and shared vision of defending civilians, and demonstrating to the populace that we as the National Guard will always be here for you. And the second tour at Department of IT was very interesting because I even had state police ask me for help to help them build certain tools for them to support their law enforcement initiatives. Although I can't get too far into that, but I'll just leave it at that.
You also work in IT on the outside, as we mentioned earlier, at MIT Lincoln Laboratory. What's that like? What does that entail?
Oh man, Lincoln Laboratory is a fascinating place. It usually borrows some researchers from MIT, the school, or campus as we call it. Occasionally some of those folk who are finishing their PhDs or something, or masters, will go to the lab to finish up and do research on behalf of the lab. MIT Lincoln Laboratory is a research and development center. It works in favor of the U.S. government, and we try to make big problems smaller for the government this time. And I guarantee you, like every amazing piece of equipment like satellites or something, or radios, I guarantee you some way, shape, or form pass through the laboratory. Usually we try to build prototypes of amazing technologies just to stay on the bleeding edge and stay ahead of the bad guys. I joined Lincoln Laboratory straight out of undergrad, so 2016. I spent about a year and a half in the Security Operations Center, so I monitored network traffic, and you can think of me as like, I don't know if I'd say the glorified gate guard, but I was manning the perimeter, so watching in the kinetic sense, I was watching cars coming in and out of the gate, inspecting them, checking the cargo. I'm doing that, but with a computer, if you frame it in that manner. But after about a year and a half of doing that and vulnerability management, so I'm the guy, in the digital world, I'm the guy that's grabbing the fence and shaking it to make sure there's no holes or anything. After doing vulnerability management for a bit and what we call perimeter monitoring, I shifted over to the research side to support what we call the Research Network Operations Center. So I was doing the same job, traffic analysis, looking at data, but I was doing it in a research capacity. Other times I still work with my old team. I still hang out with them. Usually if they have a big problem that they don't have time for, they'll detask it to me as a researcher, a supporter, a guy who has always worked with them or has familiarity with people on that team. As a researcher, I'm trying to. I don't know if I'd call myself a researcher. I'd call myself an enabler of researcher. I support the actual doctors and PhDs at the laboratory. I'm trying to help them fulfill their initiatives. So as an enabler of researcher, I specialize in what we call rapid countermeasures. I build quick tools to solve problems of the Security Operations Center. Hey, we're seeing this trait, this characteristic, this thing, this certain website. We need some way to detect if it's doing something weird. We need some way to detect whether or not we see it in our traffic, things like that.
PC or Mac?
Will I get kicked off the show?
No, but you have to be honest and you have to explain why.
Okay.
Because this could be controversial.
No.
It will be controversial.
I'm not responsible for you lose fans. PC. I'm a Windows person. I love Windows. I grew up with Windows. This is not a shameless plug for Microsoft. Please don't sue me. But having grown up with Windows and working with it a lot in my job, and Windows has the largest attack surface because there are more Windows computers that people use. People use in general, and Mac is Apple makes a good product. So I'm trying to be fair here. It just does not play nicely with the Windows world, and maybe that's where my bias comes from. I do like my iPhone though. So
that was my next question. So, yeah, iPhone or Android?
Definitely iPhone. Definitely.
Why?
To me, it's very intuitive to use. I do like Apple's vision of what privacy means to people. When we think about the world, there's a lot that we have ads. When you open up your web browser, you have ads that follow you everywhere, and suspiciously, when you're looking at cars or something with a search engine, all of a sudden you see 27 ads saying, "Hey, would you like a great deal in finance for a new car?" That's the sort of thing that makes me a little nervous about the internet. But I do love my iPhone. It's pretty friendly, and it, as my coworker once said, it just works.
Have you ever had occasion to use some of these skills you've learned in the Guard personally while on your own computer?
So one of the quote-unquote scariest things I've ever seen that personally happened to me, one of my Gmail accounts, I received a spam email, so it's just generic like, hey, it pretended to be Amazon. It wasn't. It's one of those, you have an order coming your way, and it's coming from some other guy from, gmail.com. So you're kind of like, no, that's not Amazon. I used my skill sets from the Guard and from the laboratory. So I took this email, I sent it through some tools, I ripped the email apart, and breaking it into pieces, I was looking at the underlying code. And you know how emails have graphics, they show you nice pictures. Emails never used to be that way. They used to be straight text. That's it, just like Notepad on your computer. So with all these graphics and pictures showing, the underlying code, it actually had a really tiny 1 pixel by 1 pixel image. And not, you and I, we look at a screen and 1 pixel's pretty tiny. And if you read the code, in chronological order, this email, when you open it, would run out to the internet, run back to the bad guy's server, tap them on the shoulder, and say, "Hey, can I have this photo?" And most bad people, most bad guys, the more advanced hackers, they'll keep an eye on their computer and they'll know who's talking to their computer. So they'll immediately know, like, this guy opened this email. That was one of the scariest emails I've ever received. Yeah.
Well, it's been an interesting journey for you so far, from Canon crew member to IT analyst, PhD, warrant officer candidate. The sky's the limit, it seems. And what you didn't mention during the show, but what you mentioned pre-production was there were a couple of hobbies that you've omitted. What were they again?
Oh yes. So I am. I'll just say it. I am an amateur cosplayer. So I wear costumes at anime and gaming conventions like Anime Boston or the Penny Arcade Expo East in Boston. So it's great to interact with people and have that shared sense of hobby and belonging. And it's great when you see people smiling in your costume, like, "Oh, I want a picture with you," because it's great when you see people's eyes light up like that.
And what was the character again that you dress up as?
I usually dress up as a generic soldier from the Japanese hit show Attack on Titan.
Warrant Officer Candidate Wong, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your IT analyst position with the 136 Cybersecurity Company, and also a little bit about your private sector job with MIT Lincoln Lab.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for listening to your New Hampshire National Guard podcast.
And I take it from one of your comments earlier, you're a Trekker also, not a Trekkie. It's a Trekker.
Oh, I'm actually a Star Wars person.
I thought you said "beam me up" earlier.
Oh, well, I mean, that's the hit line, you gotta stay relevant.